It's a big day for Democrats who've been raving about how great sanctuary cities are for years.
Sanctuary policies actually make cities safer.
To be clear about what Chicago is, it always will be a sanctuary city.
Together, let us build a house stronger than the coming storms, yet open to the world. A house that provides shelter to all who need it and sanctuary to all who seek it.
President Trump's ready to give these liberals exactly what they've always wanted by saying he may dump illegal immigrants in their cities.
We could fix that in so fast if the Democrats would agree. But if they don't agree, we might as well do what they always say they want. We'll bring them to sanctuary city areas and let that particular area take care of it, whether it's a state or whatever it might be. California certainly is always saying, oh, we want more people, and they want more people in their sanctuary cities. Well, we'll give them more people. We can give them a lot. We can give them an unlimited supply. And let's see if they're so happy.
Nancy Pelosi's home district in San Francisco is reportedly one of the areas that the White House discussed, but for some reason, the House Speaker is upset about it.
I don't know anything about it, but again, it's just another notion that is unworthy of the presidency of the United States and disrespectful of the challenges that we face as a country, as a people, to address who we are, a nation of immigrants.
All right, Geraldo, I don't know if this idea is actually going to happen, but it does serve the purpose of illustrating the hypocrisy from some of the Democrats in this country who say, yeah, bring them in, provide sanctuary city, just not in my city.
Let me start by agreeing that I think that a lot of what the president is saying is born of frustration because of the lack of cooperation by the Democrats on the border. They are doing nothing to help other than making things more difficult. But this is a stunt. You're not going to take, this is also illegal. I'm telling you that it is illegal.
Right, because
ask Emily that you cannot use people as props to make a political point like this.
That's what we've been doing for 40 years.
This is
Democrats say Republicans.
The road from the border to wherever the illegal immigrants are being taken will be lined with lawsuits. I guarantee it.
Okay. Emily, I think the restriction is financial. You can't just spend, it costs a lot of money to transport people all the way from the border to San Francisco.
Yes, one of the limitations on it would be budgetary in terms of whether it's considered legal. I want to point out that I just think the biggest issue to me is that the Democrats aren't listening to local law enforcement, and they are not listening to regular people. It's such a top-down discussion, and that is why there's such friction at the local community level that people are upset about. Do you guys remember in February when the woman Bambi Larson was brutally murdered by a 6-time civil detainer request illegal immigrant? He had a history of violent felonies, etc. It was, it's kind of one of those token cases of which unfortunately there are a lot. Point, guess what happened on Tuesday? The Santa Clara County administration voted overwhelmingly to soften the sanctuary policy because the point is those policies harm communities in multiple ways, including the immigrant community, because it doesn't provide the clarity that they can use to understand how and when they can immigrate legally. And so in Santa Clara County, they're voting to soften it. And as they say, the immigration laws there are dysfunctional. Everyone is confused. And as I always say, whose job is it then to clarify? Get to it, legislators. Instead of squawking about it, go do your job and clarify the policy, and then we can all survive.
All right, Greg.
This headline from the Washington Post, White House wanted border detainees released in sanctuary cities to target Trump foes. So even the media is portraying the very policies that they claim to love as punishment. I mean, if you're going to, they're actually mad at Trump for giving them what they asked for. So let's say it's a stunt. Let's say it's a bad idea. The fact is, if you don't like having these released illegal immigrants there, you have to explain why, because this is your policy. You have created this problem. So if Pelosi thinks it's a stunt, don't say it's illegal. Say, why don't you want them there?
Well, that's a great thing. If you're a reporter in Washington, Pelosi gives her Thursday press conference.
Ask them why
don't they ask Nancy Pelosi
It's going to be a doozy next week. She's going to have a lot to answer for. There's going to be lots of things. A couple things. First of all, I don't think that this policy, even if it's a stunt, let's say it's implemented, I don't think it stops the flow of migrants coming to the border.
No.
Because they're like, oh, well, then maybe we get to go to San Francisco.
I'm going to end up in San Francisco.
We're gonna do
San
Santa
Francisco.
Barbara.
But
Like,
it's still
Going to Big
brilliant
Sur.
because it is giving.
No, I'm not saying it's not brilliant.
They should
I'm just
embrace
saying
it.
It's not going to address the real problem.
Yeah.
The president says the major problem is the migrant crisis at the border.
Right.
We're being overwhelmed. We don't have enough resources. All of things. So that's one thing. The other thing, it reminds me of Bridgegate. You know, using your political levers in order to attack your political enemies. And again, I don't think that the president's base needs firing up. I get that it is a great point. It's like it plays mind games with the Democrats. Like, oh, really? Well, then what about you? What are you going to do? The other thing I would say is if the administration, who denied this up until 2 hours before the president tweeted it and said it was going to happen, don't brainstorm in emails. Brainstorm in person, not in emails.
I just think I don't think you can compare it to Bridgegate. I think that it was probably an idea that they put forth, but I do think it does make progress because you're going to force the Democrats to either embrace or deviate from a policy that they believe hypothetically.
But why not
make it reality?
Why not get the Democrats to cooperate with you?
When will that ever happen?
But let the president call Chuck. I love the president. But he's tempestuous and he's thin-skinned. He should call up Chuck Schumer.
Sounds familiar.
Call him up and say, hey, listen, dude. Let's do something before we're really in the heat of the presidential election. We've got 1 million people coming across the southern border. There is the crisis of which you spoke.
But to that point, we have had two parties that haven't solved this problem because they never wanted to. This is the
agreed.
And Trump, being essentially apolitical, let's face it, he was a Democrat for a long time. He's a Republican because it made sense. He is the first person really to say, let's try to solve it for good. He's being the adult in the room.
I don't think that's fair. I think that there are definitely, I would say, look, I work for George W. Bush. He wanted to solve that problem. The deal that was on the table is the one that's probably going to be the one that is going to be solidified. The people on the extremes, right and left, are the ones that don't want the deal. And that's what pulls people apart. I think President Trump could make this deal tomorrow.
And that's why George W. Bush got 44% of the Latino vote.
All right.
Well, that wasn't the only reason he wanted to do it. I mean, he wanted the border security, but yeah.
Democrats in one of the most liberal states in the country shamefully blocking a bill that would have provided free college tuition to children of Gold Star families, while simultaneously, this is the kicker for you, offering $27 million in financial aid to illegal immigrants applying for school. New York State, now among 18 states in this country offering taxpayers subsidized in-state tuition to illegal students. I'm sorry, what about the American kids? You know, the ones whose families are paying taxes, they're struggling to afford college themselves. And yet, we've got a giveaway for illegals? Gold Star families cannot get money for school, but illegals can? The Democratic lawmakers in the state are so far out in left field on this one that they're not even in agreement with the Democratic governor. Nonetheless, that's where we are tonight. Families who have lost loved ones fighting for our nation cannot get a break on college tuition while illegals are offered millions. Joining me right now, Gold Star mother Karen Vaughn, who runs a nonprofit for kids who have lost their parents in war. She's reacting to this. Karen, it's good to have you. What's your take?
I tell you what, sometimes I feel like the Democrats in the state of New York are trying to outdo each other on a continuous basis to see who can make the most ludicrous legislation or the most ludicrous moves. It is insulting as a Gold Star family member to have 10 times the money allocated to illegal immigrants for college tuition as allocated to Gold Star families. $2.7 million allocated to Gold Star families, $27 million allocated to illegal immigrants. I wish that I could just sit down for coffee with every single one of them and tell them what life is like for my grandchildren whose father died in the battlefields of Afghanistan. I wish that I could just personalize it for them so that they understand that people who fight for our country don't fight with an R or a D on their shoulder. They fight with an American flag on their shoulder for everybody. And yet those who've defended us, who have provided the freedom for these legislators to even have their offices, they want to disgrace their family members. One statistic many people aren't aware of is that at any given time during this, the longest war in America's history, less than 0.5% of our citizens have been engaged in the actual battle. That leaves 99.5% of us to take care of the families of those who get left behind. And I'm frankly outraged that this is the condition of our nation. And I want to say one other thing. Trish, what about the voters in New York? They're the ones putting these people in office. When are they going to shift what's happening in their state legislature? Because I don't understand what's happening here in this state. It's dumbfounding to me.
Well, and it's not just the state, Karen. I mean, this is happening all over the country right now. In particular, Gold Star families are being affected in New York, but everyday Americans right now are struggling to get access to college tuition. In-state tuition is being offered, which is subsidized, right? Because, you know, taxpayers are subsidizing that. In-state tuition is being offered to illegals. You know, last time I checked, you know, when I was a kid, you couldn't just move to California and say, I want to get UCLA tuition rates because I was a kid from New Hampshire. You had to establish residency. Now, all that's out the window. And Gold Star families and everyday Americans are getting shortchanged in the process.
This entire identity politics with the illegal immigrants has just risen to a level of absurdity that most of us, and this is what's so frustrating about it, we all know the truth of this. I read today that one of the assemblymen here in New York said that he's offended that the Republicans are using Gold Star children as pawns. What have the Democrats done with the children of illegal immigrants? I mean, this entire hysteria has been based over children, and now we're talking about children's education, while, as you said, so many Americans aren't afforded the liberty of a free education. For crying out loud, you know, they have to pay it back. Student loans, I've got one child who's still paying student loans back 12 years out of college, and most people are in that situation. And
it
so
would be nice
it is absurd.
If they could get their priorities straight.
It would be nice.
I mean,
if Americans
this seems
could,
like a simple one.
If Americans could come first. Wow. Wow.
Hey,
what a concept.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good to have you here.